Hollywood loves its fairy tales, but behind the glitter and fame are tragedies so raw they'll make you gasp. We're talking about the one nightmare no parent, celebrity or not, ever wants to face: losing a child. These aren't tabloid scandals or messy divorces. These are gut-punch losses that redefined lives, destroyed careers, and left scars that never healed. Ready to uncover the shocking stories of stars who outlived their children? Brace yourself, because some of these tales sting harder than any headline. Sylvester Stallone. When you think of Sylvester Stallone, you think of Rocky triumphing against impossible odds. But in 2012, the Italian stallion faced a battle no father can win. His eldest son, Sage, once poised to carry on his father's Hollywood legacy, was found dead at just 36 years old. The cause wasn't drugs or scandal, but something far more haunting: coronary artery disease. A hidden heart condition snatched Sage away in silence. For Stallone, this was no movie script. Sage had even acted alongside him in Rocky V, where he played Rocky's son, a heartbreaking mirror of real life. Friends say Sage was creative, thoughtful, and passionate about filmmaking, often preferring independent projects over Hollywood blockbusters. His sudden death not only devastated his father, but sent shockwaves through fans who grew up with the Rocky films. Stallone released a gut-wrenching statement pleading for privacy, his voice trembling with grief. Hollywood heavyweights rallied around him, but no words could soften the blow. The image of the invincible action hero crumbled overnight, replaced by a grieving father who would trade every award for one more day with his son. This wasn't just a loss, it was a knockout Stallone never recovered from. John Travolta and Kelly Preston. John Travolta had it all: blockbuster hits, a Hollywood power marriage, and a family he adored. But in 2009, tragedy hit during what should have been a peaceful vacation. His 16-year-old son Jet suffered a fatal seizure in the Bahamas. The shocking news spread instantly, leaving fans stunned and Travolta shattered. Jet had long battled health challenges, including Kawasaki syndrome, which can affect the heart and arteries. Despite constant medical care, nothing prepared the family for the devastating moment when he collapsed. Resuscitation efforts failed, and the Travolta's world went dark in an instant. Travolta later admitted publicly that losing Jet nearly broke him beyond repair. Friends say he withdrew from the spotlight, clinging to his daughter Ella, and later his youngest son Benjamin, who was born after Jet's death. Kelly Preston, his wife, stood strong beside him, though she too carried the unbearable grief until her own passing in 2020. Hollywood often paints Travolta as the eternal charmer with that signature smile. But behind the curtain lies a father permanently scarred by the loss of his boy. For fans, it was a reminder that fame and fortune can't shield anyone from life's cruelest twists. Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton is a guitar god, but behind the riffs and accolades lies a heartbreak that still echoes through his music. In 1991, his 4-year-old son Connor died in one of the most shocking accidents imaginable. The little boy fell from the 53rd floor window of a New York high-rise. The world recoiled in horror. How could something so senseless happen? Clapton, who was already battling personal demons at the time, was gutted. Friends say he withdrew into near isolation, haunted by guilt and unimaginable sorrow. But out of that grief came one of the most moving songs ever written, Tears in Heaven. The ballad, dripping with raw pain, became a worldwide anthem of loss, resonating with millions who had suffered similar heartbreaks. Connor's death reshaped Clapton's life. He dedicated himself to sobriety, to being present, and to ensuring his music carried meaning beyond fame. Fans who once idolized him for his guitar solos now saw him as a father forced to endure the ultimate tragedy. His pain became universal, his tears immortalized in song. For Clapton, the stage became both a sanctuary and a reminder of the child he'd never see grow up. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was the baddest man on the planet. He knocked out opponents in seconds, terrifying anyone who stepped into the ring. But in 2009, he was blindsided by a loss no opponent could deliver. His 4-year-old daughter, Exodus, died in a freak treadmill accident at their Phoenix home. The details were brutal. A cord from the exercise machine had tightened around her neck, leaving her unconscious. Despite desperate efforts to save her, Exodus passed away the next day. For Tyson, the man who had once seemed invincible, this tragedy brought him to his knees. Known for his rage and ferocity, Tyson suddenly became a broken father, weeping publicly and admitting he had no idea how to move forward. He later revealed in interviews that her death forced him to confront his own destructive life. "I didn't want to live no more," he confessed, laying bare the depth of his despair. Over time, Tyson found strength in his other children and in transforming his life. But the loss of Exodus remains the wound that never heals. The boxing champ who feared no man discovered the cruel truth. The greatest blow of all comes when fate takes your child. Anna Nicole Smith. Anna Nicole Smith's life was a whirlwind of tabloid headlines, courtroom battles, and reality TV chaos. But nothing prepared her for the devastating loss that struck in 2006. Just days after giving birth to her daughter, Smith's 20-year-old son Daniel suddenly died while visiting her in the hospital. The timing was almost too cruel to believe. Smith was cradling new life while losing the child who had been her anchor for 2 decades. Daniel's cause of death was a lethal combination of medications, a tragic accident that left Smith inconsolable. Friends say she screamed in anguish, unable to process how joy and grief could collide in the same room. Daniel had been her constant companion, the quiet presence who supported her through fame's insanity. His death sent Anna Nicole into a spiral of despair, and many believe she never recovered. Within months, she herself died, leaving behind her newborn daughter. For the public, the story was almost surreal. A woman living the wildest Hollywood soap opera suddenly struck by the rawest tragedy. For Smith, it was proof that even in the spotlight, a mother's heart can break just as deeply as anyone else's. Daniel's death remains one of the saddest chapters in modern celebrity history. Vince Neil. Motley Crue's Vince Neil built his career on excess, chaos, and screaming stadium anthems. But in 1995, his world was rocked by something even louder than heavy metal, the sound of heartbreak. His 4-year-old daughter, Skylar, was diagnosed with Wilms's tumor, a rare form of kidney cancer. Neil did everything a desperate father could. He launched fundraisers, poured money into treatments, and even shaved his head in solidarity as Skylar endured painful procedures. For a man known as the Wild Party King of the Sunset Strip, this was a sobering crash into reality. Friends remember him spending hours at her hospital bedside, far removed from the sex, drugs, and rock and roll cliches his band was famous for. Despite surgeries and aggressive treatments, Skylar's tiny body couldn't endure the fight. She passed away in August 1995, leaving Neil devastated. He later admitted her death sent him into a spiral of grief and self-destruction. Even decades later, he still speaks of her with a raw tenderness that cuts through his hard rock persona. Skylar's passing wasn't just another celebrity tragedy. It showed fans that even the loudest rock stars can be silenced by grief. For Neil, no platinum album or sold-out concert could fill the silence Skylar left behind. Marie Osmond. Marie Osmond, America's sweetheart of variety TV and stage musicals, endured a heartbreak that few knew how to process. In 2010, her 18-year-old son, Michael, fell to his death from the 8th floor of his Los Angeles apartment building. The story shocked fans who had long seen the Osmond family as symbols of joy, faith, and old-fashioned values. Michael had struggled for years with depression and feelings of isolation. Despite family support and counseling, he felt overwhelmed by life in ways no one could fully understand. Osmond, who had always balanced her career with being a devoted mother, was left shattered. She briefly stepped away from her Las Vegas show to grieve, but her return to the stage was marked by raw honesty. When she spoke about Michael's passing, she didn't sugarcoat the pain. She admitted she would never be the same, but she wanted to keep living for her other children. Fans admired her resilience, though many could see the sadness in her eyes even years later. Marie's story revealed a painful truth. Behind the sequins and spotlight, celebrity parents can't protect their children from life's hidden battles, and when those battles claim them, the stage lights dim forever. Robert Plant. Led Zeppelin frontman Robert Plant was larger than life. With his lion's mane hair and wailing vocals, he defined an era of rock and roll. But in 1977, while the band was at the peak of its fame, Plant's world came crashing down. His 5-year-old son, Karak, suddenly fell ill and died of a stomach infection. The loss was swift and brutal. Plant was on tour in the U.S. when the news reached him. He immediately flew home, abandoning the spotlight without hesitation. Fans were stunned as Zeppelin canceled shows, but behind the scenes, a father was living every parent's nightmare. Karak had been Plant's pride and joy, the son he often boasted about in interviews. His sudden passing left him questioning everything: his career, his fame, even his reason to keep singing. Plant later admitted he nearly quit music entirely, unable to find meaning in the face of such a cruel loss. The tragedy left its mark on Zeppelin, too. Many say the band's mood changed permanently after Karak's death. While they soldiered on, the fire had dimmed. For Plant, every lyric and performance from that moment forward carried an invisible weight. The grief of a father who lost his little boy to something as ordinary and deadly as illness. Loretta Lynn. Loretta Lynn, the coal miner's daughter turned country legend, built her career on songs of heartache and resilience. But in 1984, she faced a personal tragedy that cut deeper than any ballad. Her son, Jack Benny Lynn, drowned at just 34 years old while trying to cross a river on horseback near the family ranch in Tennessee. The accident stunned not just her fans, but also the tight-knit country music community. Jack had been a strong rider and outdoorsman, but nature can be merciless. Searchers later found him downstream, his life cut short in the prime of adulthood. Loretta, known for her tough spirit, was gutted. She often said her children were her world, and Jack's death left a hole no amount of music could fill. She canceled shows and retreated from the spotlight for a time, leaning on her family to carry her through. Though Loretta continued performing for decades after, fans often noticed a shadow in her songs when she sang about love and loss. Jack's drowning became one of those hidden wounds she carried quietly. Proof that even country royalty can't outsing tragedy. O.J. Simpson. Before his life became dominated by infamous headlines, O.J. Simpson was an adored sports icon and budding actor. But even in those seemingly golden years, tragedy struck his family. In 1979, his 2-year-old daughter, Erin, drowned in the family's swimming pool just a month before her 3rd birthday. For O.J. and his then-wife, Marguerite, the loss was unbearable. Neighbors recalled frantic attempts to revive the toddler before paramedics rushed her to the hospital. Despite being placed on life support, Erin passed away days later, leaving the family devastated. At the time, Simpson was transitioning from NFL superstar to Hollywood personality, but none of his career successes could touch the raw grief of losing a child. Friends said he was inconsolable, struggling to reconcile his public image as a charismatic hero with his private anguish. Though history would later remember O.J. for far darker events, the death of Erin remains one of the quieter, tragic chapters in his life. It's a reminder that even before scandal consumed him, O.J. had already faced the most crushing heartbreak of all, burying his own little girl. Keanu Reeves. Keanu Reeves, the actor everyone calls Hollywood's gentle soul, faced a tragedy that reshaped his life forever. In 1999, Reeves and his partner, Jennifer Syme, were expecting their first child, a daughter named Ava. But joy turned into sorrow when Ava was stillborn just weeks before her due date. For Keanu, the loss was devastating. Friends recall how the actor, known for his quiet kindness, became even more withdrawn. The grief created distance between him and Jennifer, and their relationship eventually collapsed under the weight of the heartbreak. Tragically, Jennifer herself would die in a car accident less than 2 years later, deepening Reeves's spiral of pain. Hollywood saw him continue to work. The Matrix sequels, indie projects, appearances on red carpets. But those who knew him said he carried Ava's absence like an invisible shadow. Interviews often revealed a quiet melancholy when he spoke about family or loss, showing how deeply this tragedy had marked him. Reeves, admired for his humility, became a figure people projected strength and resilience onto. Yet behind the calm exterior was a father who never got to hold his baby girl alive. Ava's loss remains one of the most haunting untold chapters in the life of an actor, adored for being both a superstar and profoundly human. Bill Cosby. Before his name was tied to scandal, Bill Cosby was once America's dad, thanks to The Cosby Show. But in 1997, his carefully built image cracked with a real-life heartbreak. His 27-year-old son, Ennis, was murdered in Los Angeles. Ennis, a doctoral student working toward a career in special education, was changing a flat tire on the side of the freeway when he was shot in a botched robbery. The senseless crime stunned the nation. People weren't just shocked by the brutality, they mourned the lost potential of a young man who by all accounts was intelligent, kind, and dedicated to helping others. For Cosby and his wife Camille, the news was unbearable. Ennis had been their only son, and Cosby often called him his hero. He poured his grief into public pleas for peace and justice, while quietly struggling to reconcile the violent loss with the image of family stability he had, always projected. Though Cosby's later life would be dominated by entirely different headlines, the murder of Ennis remains one of the darkest and most tragic episodes in his family's story. It was a cruel reminder that fame and money cannot protect against random acts of violence. Mary Tyler Moore. Mary Tyler Moore was television royalty, known for her infectious smile and groundbreaking roles that made her an icon of independence. But her personal life was marked by heartbreak that few fans realized. In 1980, her only son, Richard Meeker Jr., died suddenly at just 24 years old. The cause was a gun accident in his Los Angeles home. Reports indicated Richard had been handling a small firearm when it discharged, killing him instantly. The shocking news stunned the entertainment world, especially since Moore had always presented such a cheerful, upbeat persona on screen. Friends said the tragedy left her shaken and devastated. Already struggling with diabetes and personal challenges, Moore sank into grief, admitting later that losing her son was the most painful experience of her life. While she carried on with her career, starring in acclaimed roles and continuing to break television barriers, she was never quite the same. The laughter Mary gave the world was real, but behind it lay a mother's heartbreak. For her fans, it was a jarring reminder that even the women who seemed invincible on screen could suffer in the most human, fragile ways behind the scenes. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the silent film genius who made millions laugh, lived through a private grief that rarely makes the history books. In 1919, his son Norman Spencer Chaplin was born, but the joy was fleeting. The child survived only 3 days before passing away. For Chaplin, who was already one of the most famous men in the world, the tragedy hit like a silent hammer. At a time when infant mortality was still common, the loss may not have surprised doctors, but for the comedian who defined joy, it was devastating. He rarely spoke publicly about Norman, but insiders noted the sadness that clung to him afterward. Chaplin's films were often filled with themes of loss, resilience, and survival against impossible odds. While audiences laughed at the kid or marveled at city lights, those who knew him believed his personal grief seeped into his art. The Little Tramp wasn't just a character, he was Chaplin's way of coping with the harsh blows life had dealt him. Norman's brief life remains a hidden chapter in Chaplin's story, overshadowed by his fame. But it reveals a side of the legend audiences rarely saw. A father who mourned a child who never had the chance to grow up. Dr. Dre, the pioneering hip-hop mogul who built empires from beats, faced a loss that no amount of success could soften. In 2008, his 20-year-old son, Andre Young Jr., was found unresponsive at home after a night out. The coroner later confirmed the cause was a drug overdose. Andre had been struggling privately, despite being the son of one of the most influential figures in music. Friends described him as charismatic and ambitious, hoping to step out of his father's enormous shadow and carve his own path. But the pressures of fame-adjacent life weighed heavily, and his struggles went largely unnoticed until it was too late. For Dre, who had already weathered countless professional battles and personal controversies, this was a wound that struck deeper than any feud or industry rivalry. The loss left him shaken and reclusive for a time, canceling public appearances as he grieved privately with his family. Fans often forget that behind the mogul image, Dre is also a father. Andre's death stripped away the armor of success, leaving only the raw pain of a parent who would give everything to hear his son's voice again. In the music world, Dre's beats always thunder, but the silence Andre left behind may be the loudest sound of all. Marvin Gaye Sr. and Marvin Gaye Jr. Marvin Gaye was the Prince of Motown, the voice behind What's Going On and Let's Get It On. But behind the velvet voice and timeless hits was a family tragedy so shocking it still rattles the music world. In 1984, at just 44 years old, Marvin Gaye Jr. was shot and killed by his own father, Marvin Gaye Sr., after a heated argument at their Los Angeles home. The world was stunned. Here was a man whose music gave hope, peace, and sensuality to millions, gunned down in a moment of rage by the very person who brought him into the world. The altercation reportedly stemmed from years of tension, strained by Gaye's struggles with drugs, depression, and financial battles. On the eve of his 45th birthday, his life ended violently, turning a family feud into global heartbreak. For fans, it was unthinkable. For his family, it was unbearable. The man who sang about love was silenced by bloodshed. His father later claimed self-defense but received a suspended sentence, leaving many outraged. Marvin Gaye's tragic end wasn't just another tabloid story. It was the cruel irony of a life spent singing about love, lost in the ultimate act of hate. Sinead O'Connor. Sinead O'Connor's voice was haunting, raw, and unforgettable. But her most haunting chapter had nothing to do with music. In 2022, her 17-year-old son Shane was found dead after going missing from care. The news hit like a lightning bolt, shocking both her fans and the wider world. Shane had been under watch due to struggles with mental health, and despite efforts to protect him, tragedy struck. O'Connor's grief poured onto social media in real time, where she mourned publicly, lashing out at the system she felt had failed her boy. Her pain was so palpable that fans across the globe felt it with her. Sinead, already known for her outspoken battles with the press, religion, and the music industry, suddenly became a mother stripped bare by loss. She canceled concerts, retreated from the spotlight, and admitted her world had ended with Shane's passing. Just a year later, she herself was gone. leaving many to believe her heartbreak played a role in her own early death. It was a cruel chapter in a life already full of turbulence, a reminder that even the strongest voices can be silenced by grief too heavy to carry. Gracie Allen and George Burns. George Burns and Gracie Allen were Hollywood's golden comedy couple. On screen, they traded laughs effortlessly, and off-screen, they built a family that seemed equally charmed. But life delivered them a crushing blow when their adopted daughter, Sandra Jean, died young, leaving a shadow on their otherwise glittering story. Sandra, who had been adopted as an infant, grew up in the glow of her famous parents, but often struggled with the pressures of living in their towering shadow. Though details of her passing were kept private at the time, the family's grief was undeniable. Burns rarely spoke about it in detail, but those close to him said it deeply affected both him and Gracie. The couple's ability to make America laugh masked the sadness they carried privately. For George, who lived to be 100, the memory of losing Sandra lingered throughout his long life. It was a reminder that no matter how much fame or humor you wield, tragedy can strike when you least expect it. Behind the curtain of one of Hollywood's most beloved marriages was a heartbreak few fans ever knew existed. A lost daughter who never got to fully write her own story. Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson is best known for his tough guy roles, a screen persona built on grit and resilience. But in real life, Neeson has endured grief that would level most men. After losing his wife, Natasha Richardson, in a tragic skiing accident in 2009, he faced another heartbreak when his nephew, Ronan Sexton, died young in 2019 following a fall. Though Ronan was technically Neeson's nephew, the pain struck like that of a father losing a son. Neeson had helped raise his own children in the aftermath of Natasha's death, and family became his anchor. Losing Ronan reopened old wounds, another cruel reminder that life can rip loved ones away without warning. For Neeson, already scarred by loss, the tragedy echoed through his work. Fans noticed his roles grew darker, his on-screen characters grimmer. Behind every tough monologue was a man who had lived through real-life devastation. While Ronan's name may not be as widely recognized as Neeson's, his death is a crucial part of the actor's story, a reminder that grief doesn't strike just once. Sometimes it circles back, cutting deeper with each blow. Prince. Prince, the enigmatic genius who redefined music and performance, faced a tragedy so private that many fans didn't even know it happened. In 1996, his son, Boy Gregory, was born with Pfeiffer syndrome, a rare genetic condition that affects skull and bone development. Tragically, the infant lived only a few days. For Prince and his then-wife, Maite Garcia, the loss was devastating. At the height of his fame, when he was dazzling the world with electrifying performances, he was simultaneously mourning the death of his firstborn. The couple kept the details private for years, but Garcia later revealed the immense toll it took on their marriage and their lives. Prince never spoke much about Boy Gregory publicly, preferring to grieve in silence, but fans who knew his music closely pointed to shifts in his lyrics and performances during that era, sensing the pain that lurked beneath his flamboyant stage persona. Behind the purple suits, the electric guitars, and the mystique was a grieving father who learned that even legends cannot shield their children from fate. Boy Gregory's short life remains one of the most hidden yet heartbreaking chapters in Prince's story. Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan is known worldwide as the smiling daredevil who risked his life for stunts and turned martial arts into family entertainment. But off-screen, his family life was marked by pain and estrangement that fans rarely saw. In the late 1990s and 2000s, stories swirled about turmoil involving his children, especially his strained relationship with his son, JC. But even more quietly devastating was the tragedy tied to his daughter Etta, who grew up distant from him and carried immense struggles that played out under media scrutiny. While not always tied to a single, sudden accident, Chan's family heartbreak unfolded in the public eye as a series of cracks widening into chasms. His children battled identity, loneliness, and the heavy burden of living under their father's shadow. Some reports even described how he himself admitted regret over how he raised them, acknowledging that fame consumed him more than fatherhood ever did. Jackie Chan may have won over millions with slapstick fights and dazzling choreography, but when it came to family, his story wasn't full of happy endings. For fans, it was a reminder that even the heroes who seem invincible on screen can stumble badly in the real battles of fatherhood. James Taylor and Carly Simon. James Taylor and Carly Simon, the iconic singer-songwriter duo, had a love story full of music, fame, and turbulence. But behind the music, there were personal tragedies that cast long shadows over their family legacy. Their children were caught between two massive stars, and along the way, the family faced unbearable losses that didn't always make headlines. Though many fans associate Taylor with resilience, surviving addiction, depression, and personal battles, few realize the grief tied to their family. Reports point to losses that haunted Taylor, including extended family members and loved ones dying young, leaving him with survivor's guilt that filtered into his songwriting. For Simon, too, family tragedy struck hard. These losses may not have been broadcast with the same intensity as tabloid scandals, but they carved deep scars into both parents and their children. Their story stands as proof that tragedy doesn't always arrive with flashing headlines or explosive events. Sometimes it creeps in quietly, through accidents, illnesses, or personal struggles that erode a family from within. For Taylor and Simon, the songs they left behind are tinged with sorrow that only those who know their private pain can truly hear. So there you have it, 22 celebrities whose lives were forever changed by the unthinkable, the loss of their own children. Behind the laughter, the music, the fame, these were real parents facing the cruelest twist life can deal. Which of these stories hit you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking true stories from the world of Hollywood. Because as you've seen today, sometimes the greatest heartbreaks happen far from the spotlight.